on December 22nd, 2022. Could we get a roll call, please?
Of course. Christia Clare.
Here.
Catherine Consalvo.
Here.
Sierra Dulce. Julie Hammond. Elizabeth Costa.
Here.
Michael Mascola.
Here.
Todd McCormick.
Here.
Sue Sherman.
Here.
Karen White.
Here.
Mark Sherwood.
Here. Okay, great, thank you. Michael, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Michael. All right, next on the agenda, can we have a motion from the floor for the approval of the minutes from the December? Okay, motion from Sue. Can we get a second? Second from Mark. All right, please take a minute to review last meeting's minutes. All right, discussion, any changes? All right, let's call for a vote. All in favor? Six. All opposed? Abstentions? All right. Thank you.
What was the vote on that?
602.
I just like your pointer.
Maria, correspondence. We could, all right, delegations individuals, that's a no. Let's go over to Chris, administrative report.
Thank you. So, as usual, the PAC continues to host a number of events, especially this holiday season. There'll be concerts for elementary, middle school, high school through January, essentially. So please take a look, get over, catch out a concert. You'll definitely enjoy it. Put you in the spirit as well. I do want to put in a plug for the high school varsity hockey team. I did attend last Saturday night's game at the Salem Ice Center. That's their home ice. They played a great game. They did come up a little bit short, but it was really cool at the end of going into the end of the third period. Cole Rigo, who was a freshman, scored his first career high school goal. It was, he outskated two defenders who were chasing him down, brought it in top shelf, beat the goalie. It was really a great goal, a real good highlight for the team, who were all fully behind him. So it was really cool to see. They do have a game tomorrow. They have a matinee tomorrow at 12:30 at the Salem Ice Center. So one of the things I did notice at the game, not an overwhelming crowd of students, and I know at our basketball games, our wrestling matches, our football games, we have great student attendance. Of course, it's more local. It's a little easier to get to, but just a plug out for the hockey team. It's a good event. They have the same kind of things happening for the boosters. It is indoors during this cold time, but there are also so many things that they can do. They're typically, they have weekday but also weekend hockey games, and, there's lots for them to do in Salem over at, places like Tuscan Villages, bowling. There's all those things that they could make a night of it. So I would put it out there to students to start supporting that hockey team. It's a good little program that we're building. Boys wrestling last night had a great victory as well. When I first walked in, they were a little behind, which is not something that our wrestlers are accustomed to, but they had a great comeback win, beating Pinkerton 54-22. So it was really exciting, and again, great crowd participation. Don't Touch That Dial last Friday night was outstanding, so if we tend to run that again at any time or in years future, it was written by It was written by Mr. Constantino. A lot of Merrimack Valley references. Those of us from the Merrimack Valley area, Lawrence, Methuen, Salem, Haverhill, there are a lot of references. And the kids did a great job with it. And it's a nice combination of theater and music. So please check out the PAC performances. Again, there's lots going on there. Today, it was a lot of excitement around the district, of course, with lots of different parties and things like that happening the last day of school before the break. And over at the high school, they had a number of activities that included, just in the afternoon, basically the last period, that included opportunities for students to either go watch a performance of Don't Touch That Dial, so it was available to students, which was great. They had board games for students that didn't want to maybe have a theater or music experience or an athletic experience. So they had board games in the cafeteria, and in the gym there was it sounds like it's decades old tradition of faculty-student basketball game. I did learn a little bit that they once had donkey ball, that they actually rode donkeys years ago.
Dating yourself.
Yeah. So you were familiar with this, the donkey
I'm
ball?
not a donkey.
No, but you're familiar with donkey
I do
ball.
not ride a donkey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So we won't be doing that on any of our gym floors, I can guarantee you that. But it was a great game. It was pretty tight. I think the staff was getting nervous. I know Coach Fitz was getting nervous. He claims to have a 26-year winning streak as a staff member. I was really hoping the students could pull it off. It was close, but they were unable to. But it was great sportsmanship. It was well attended. It was well supported by the students. There was a halftime dodgeball game that the sophomores actually won. They do it by class, so freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and the sophomores actually took home the prize in that one, so that was exciting. And, you know, one of the coolest things I started my day with today was attending Mr. Broad's integrated physics and chemistry class. They do a project regarding drag and, air resistance, and they do it with Matchbox cars. So they spend a few weeks working on this project. The projects are outstanding. I'll have some highlights with some slides for the next school board meeting because the work that the students had done was fantastic. They all did presentations. They each had different cars. One had the Batmobile. One had a BMW. They had a mail truck. And they have apparently we have a couple of wind tunnels. Mr. Broad has one that he's crafted himself. And what's truly remarkable is that all of the findings, so they test the drag on all of these vehicles with this homemade wind tunnel that Mr. Broad has made. And they have, they do all the math that's associated with calculations and all of that. And again, I'll show that at the next school board meeting or one in the future. They're within 10% of what the General Motors or whoever is doing, wind tunnel testing with these vehicles. They're with a 10%, so it's incredibly accurate. This PVC tube and a leaf blower air tunnel, and what the students were able to do, and they learned so much about it. It was really cool, so that was great. So thank you to Mr. Broad and his class. They were outstanding hosts and did a great job with their presentations.
Awesome.
And that's it for me. I don't know if Justin has anything.
Just as a newcomer, I'll take a quick 10 seconds to recognize Lisa and Carrie and Maria. I've asked for a lot of information this year from each of you guys in terms of running numbers. You do it like spontaneously and immediately, and it's well presented. So just wanted to recognize your work in front of this group. Thank you for that.
Excuse me.
Thanks, Justin. Maria, any updates from you? I mean, we're already going to hear from you quite a bit tonight anyway, so.
No, working hard, trying to get everything that we need that the school board needs for the union negotiations. I've been working hard on that and consistent. I have to make a mention of the huge support that I have felt this year from the school board. They have been very diligent in every single one of the contracts, which I personally appreciate a lot. The involvement and the consistency of them trying to make it happen, so that is appreciated. And working, trying to make the best out of these two budgets and trying to come together as one Timberlane to make the best for the district. I think we all are on board with that, so.
Great.
Again, I appreciate you guys collaborating on that effort as well. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Maria. All right, next, reports of committees. I don't really have an update, but if anyone else on any committees would like to report anything new, CIP?
Strategic plan.
Yeah,
No?
TSSU signed.
Yeah, why don't
and-
we do a school board
Yeah,
update?
so the TSSU signed, which was really nice, took a lot of work and back and forth. But I think we were able to come to a consensus agreement that everybody felt was fair. We're still working on an ongoing basis with TTA, and I mean, just today, Maria was running numbers and where I think there's a real vested and emotional interest in trying to find a solution that all parties can agree to. So that has been going on. And just to rebound the compliment that Maria had given, for those who don't know Maria, Chris, I mean, the whole team here, throughout the day, we'll be sending them requests, and they'll get it back to us at 9:30 at night or 6 o'clock in the morning. Or quite often, I'll call Maria and say, please explain this to me. I'm not certain that I'm certain. So again, hats off to the team for, it is a team effort. Win, lose, or draw, but we are on the same team, you know, pushing the same direction, so thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Are there, how many negotiations are we still
So
waiting for?
we're waiting for, as far as I know, perhaps you can update, TAM has not the communication as frequently as we had want, so I'm not certain where that stands right now. We are, again, we're still on a day-to-day, perhaps hour-to-hour basis, you know, going back and forth with TTA. The others have been signed.
Okay.
So, of the three that we're actively involved with, 2 out of 3 have been signed thus far.
Great.
I know Tam is ratifying on the 3rd, January 3rd, after the break.
Okay.
That's what we heard today.
So we're almost there, and what's the line in the sand as far as,
By
Getting the warrant.
January 10th.
Yeah,
okay. All right. Still some time.
still time.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, with that, let's move on to new business, and I'll hand it over to Maria, and let's discuss what we're here for. This should be the last meeting, or will be the last meeting of 2022, until our public hearing, which is scheduled for Thursday, January 12th. So hopefully we can come to an agreement tonight with a vote and a number, so that we can present that to the public on the 12th of January. So with that, Maria, take it away.
So you have a package that is the long paper package. The first page is this colorful graph that was crafted in a team with my assistant business administrator, Lisa Oliver, and our superintendent. It is a graph that actually shows the different towns and the rates for the taxes in each of the towns. The line is the assessment valuation. So you can see how the assessment valuation impacts the local education tax and the number of students. So if you follow the number of students, you start with Atkinson, they have 718 students, and their local education tax, the green bar, is low. But their assessment valuation is the highest of the 4 towns. Then you go to Danville, and they have 585 students, less students than Atkinson, and if you focus on the green bar, it's a lot higher than Atkinson, but the valuation is a lot lower. And then when you go to Plasto and Sandown, very close number of students, but again, if you focus on the green bar, almost double the rate for the local education. So it shows, our main objective with this graph was to show how much the impact of the assessment valuation on your education tax on your towns. So we just wanted to visually show the impact of that.
What is this line?
That's the assessment valuation.
Think of it as a dot, right? So for Atkinson, it's about, what's that, $26?
No, it's 1.5 billion.
Is the
Is the
assessment
town assessment. is the assessment, the total assessment property value for the
I'm
town.
with Mark, I'm lost.
The numbers on the left-hand side
Yeah.
are the tax rate.
The
Per
tax
thousand,
rate.
right. the mill
Right.
rate, Right.
But due to the, trying to get on a graph to scale the assessment values to fit onto there, that's why we had to divide it by,
So the line is just to show how a high valuation for the town means lower tax rate.
So I'm just gonna, if I go through one at a time, so Atkinson's somewhere's in that, just over the 25 on the mill rate.
No, the
No.
line doesn't have anything to do with
The line,
with that
the
access.
numbers don't go with the line, the numbers are the bar.
The bar graph goes with the left access.
Got it, okay.
Yeah.
So
So
the-
they have a much lower tax rate because they have a high valuation but lower amount of students when you compare them, say, to Plastow.
We can label.
That also has a similarly high valuation but has a
Yeah,
number of more students.
So the assessment valuation, how would I look at, Danville compared to Plastow? Or is that just
So if you
somewhat
look
representative?
in this long paper, in the black long paper, the second box down says education tax rates. On that one, you have the assessment valuation with utilities and without utilities for each of the towns. So second box, the first line says assessment with utilities and assessment without utilities. That's the number that is in that blue line. So if you look at those numbers, Atkinson has the largest, the highest assessment valuation, then Plastow, then Sandown, and then Danville.
So I think the purpose of this graph, Michael, is just to show, is just to explain the fluctuation from town to town, right? Like, I think we could probably look at, if you want to compare Danville and Sandown, the big driver for the higher tax rate in Sandown is the number of students, because the assessment is very similar. Same with Plastow and Atkinson, the assessment is somewhat similar, but the number of students is what drives the tax rate higher in Plastow than you would see in Atkinson.
if we all had the same tax
Assessment.
assessment valuation, it was all high,
Yep,
you'd see a way different impact
right, correct.
on the rate, on the rate.
Okay.
Thank you for the feedback. I can definitely add the numbers to the line. Okay, so that, again, it was just a piece of information and a visual that can show the impact of that valuation, the planning of your town, your tax rate. The next two pages are the two papers with the charts. It's a lot of information in these two
These ones,
pages.
right?
Yes, this one. So if you put them side by side, at the top, you see that one has the amounts for the warrant articles, and the other one does not have the warrant articles in it.
So the base for each is the proposed budget that we're talking about tonight.
So if you see the first column is fiscal year 23 voted budget, the second column is the proposed budget for 2024. The one that has the warrant articles, it has the 4 union warrant articles and the list that the school board is proposing to do for the capital improvements that will give us actually rebates.
So that is gonna be a warrant article in March.
Yes.
And what's the total amount of the lease?
It's $20 million lease over 30 years.
Okay,
So it's gonna be an impact of about $1.3 million each year.
Exactly, that's the lease payment will be at 1.3 million every year. So what I did on this one is I follow the methodology that the DRA follows to calculate taxes. That's why I left all the information if you are interested in following through. The part that I wanted to share with you is the bottom part, which is the tax rate impact. Now, keep in mind, on this one, I only kept the local education tax rate and the state education tax rate, because our budget only impacts those two tax rates. We don't impact the county or the municipal rate. So I separate those two tax rates that we impact with our budget. So if you see in the bottom, I put it for each of the towns on a 300,000 value home, on a 400,000, 500,000, and 600,000. What is current, what the impact will be on the proposed budget with the warrants and without the warrants. So you can see the annual impact and the monthly impact for each of the towns.
So much information, but thank you so much.
I know it's a
Oh
lot
my
of
goodness.
information, and
Yeah.
like I said, I chose to leave it all because I know some of you like it, some of you don't like it or not necessarily understanding. I'm happy to walk you through, or if you want to call me, we can set up a time. I'm happy to explain to you, but I left it because of that, because I know some of you like the detail.
Yes, thank you.
Excuse me, Maria?
Mm-hmm.
I may have missed it, but could you just explain what the warrant Article 7, the CIP lease, is? Is this for the not home energy, but?
That is, most of them is energy savings, yes. So after they did the assessment of all the buildings,
I know.
they came out with what each of the buildings need, right? Which we all know that we have, our newest building is 22 years old. So we have very old buildings that need a lot of repairs. Right now, building new buildings is, for a new middle and high school, we're talking about $250 million. So it's not something that we can
Not
handle right now.
feasible.
Not feasible at this point.
juncture.
So what the school board requested from the company that did the evaluation was, give us a list of projects that will generate savings, so we can look at that more segregated group of projects that we can probably handle on a better. I have not received yet the exact savings from them. I had a meeting with them. They're gonna give it to me next week. So I did not include the savings there yet because I don't have the number, but there will be savings.
Will that be reflected in the warrant article?
Yes, so that will, yes.
Okay.
So that 1.3 million might only be 800,000 if they can guarantee us that we will see a $500,000 savings by doing these projects.
Which
Again,
in
I don't have the
turn
number.
will lower these tax impacts.
Right. I don't have the number, and I didn't want to put an estimate because it's something, like, I'm not sure if it's 100 or 600. So I need their number. The projects are basically doing all the LED light upgrades in the elementary schools, doing some boilers, very old boilers that we have in the high school and in one of the elementaries, I don't remember which one. Some of the remaining HVAC systems, some windows. So everything is related to energy savings. So that way we can generate the savings to help pay for the lease. Because again, it's over $140 million what we need district-wide just to fix the buildings that we have.
So taking this, we'll call it loan lease, gets us these kind of projects done sooner than just, I'll use the word chugging along like we've been, trying to Band-Aid things and just, in my humble opinion, getting further and further and further behind. So, seeing some energy savings and getting that warrant number down a smidge would be good for the voter to see.
Yep. I agree with you, Sue. And I think I was mentioning to Michael earlier, we have I've been on this budget committee for 5 years. This is my 5th budget. We have level funded for 5 years straight. And we have put money away every year, right, for facilities. But to your point, it's not quite enough, right?
enough.
Over time, it's really just kind of kept the lights on, but we've still seen deterioration in the buildings. It just wasn't enough. So I believe what the school board's intention here, and I assume they've already reached out to a bond company and
Yeah, the company that did the,
they did it, right? Yeah.
that did the study, we
Yeah.
will do it through them.
Yeah, and I've watched a few of the school board meetings, and I know that, there's some are, maybe we should try to go out to the public and talk about, building new schools. But again, $250 million, that's a huge bond, and that's a big, big, big number that I don't think we're quite ready to swallow. But something like this could really take a big swing at that CIP list.
Right.
If
And
not
some of those things
most
have been
of
on
it.
that list.
For
since-
years.
Forever.
Julie,
Right.
remember when we started, because you were on that original committee, that book, they've been in that book
I
since
was
we
looking at it
started.
today,
Since day one.
the original one.
So, we finished paying off the PAC with the bond that we had. In my mind, this replaces, all it does is, it's similar money
Yeah.
to move on and get repairs done that seems like a good idea. It seems like a good idea to me. I hope the voters see it that way.
My
The
own-
school board can explain it.
My only question with this is, well, it's not really a question, more an observation, is that we're talking with the 83 million, that includes an extra million that we're adding on top of $1 million,
Right.
right?
Which is more for
It
preventive
is.
maintenance yeah.
True, and we can't assume that any one of these warrant articles is gonna pass at the polls. But going forward after this year, were that to pass, that would mean we would probably allocate less every year, because a lot of the things that we're putting this money away for every year for these repairs, this upkeep and this maintenance is hopefully gonna be knocked out with this bond, if it passes.
Maybe
So-
some light at the end of
Some
the
of
tunnel.
them.
Yeah, light at the end of the tunnel, exactly, but for this particular budget, we can't assume that, right? I
So
mean,
if that fails,
Right.
all we've got is a one, whatever we put in the.
1 million.
well, it's, right now, it's 2.
Right, but without
Right.
this, if this article failed,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
all we'd have left,
Yeah. Well, there's $1 million in the default, but yeah, that's really just keeping the lights on.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Continue, Maria.
So then the other long.
Or does anyone have any questions
yeah.
about these charts?
these are good to see, because,
Again, if you wanna look at them and let me
Get
know if you have
phone
any questions, I'm happy to spend some time with you going through anything that you might want to understand better. I'm happy to do that. Just look at them and let me know.
All right.
The other long paper that you have is the actual difference between the proposed budget and the default budget. So we have a proposed budget of 83,020,418. We have a default budget of 81,151,107. The variance is 1,869,311. So this here at the top has, in summary, what are those lines that make the difference, and 3 of those lines have the detail behind them at the bottom. So the first line is that million that the budget committee is suggesting to put into the CIP, which is very much needed. The second line is maintenance and repair is 219,760, and the detail for that maintenance line is the first detail at the bottom. When you go through it, you can see it's basically adding some dollars, basic maintenance, preventive maintenance dollars to each of our schools. We have some floor asbestos in some of the floors in our schools that we have to repair. We have to replace some of the water fountains. So if you go through the list, it's really not anything that is not needed.
We're not putting gold trimming in the
Exactly.
bathrooms. you're
It's
saying.
just basic maintenance that, again, our very old buildings are in desperate need of. So that
But
is,
I like to look at it the other way. If the budget, proposed budget fails and we have to go to the default, these are the things we can't do. Go way down to district-wide equipment. Uniforms for the concert band, replacement tables for Atkinson Academy, projectors for the schools, and it goes on, down to classroom rugs. I mean, that won't be happening in a default, and of course, including the capital improvement requested fund. You have to look at it that way.
That is how I look at it. And tell us a little bit about these inspections that I see in here, Maria. Are these just
so,
haven't been done in a while, or?
so some of those inspections, actually, a lot of them are required. We have not done some of them in our district, and this last year we had been catching up doing them. Our director of plan operations have experience in schools in New Hampshire, so he knows and he's aware of the inspections that we are required to have. So that is one part of it. The other part is that the ones that we were doing, we did not have a budget for them. So we were using the capital improvement money, the $1 million that we have in the budget, to pay for those inspections, which is not the intent of that money, because again, we need it for the capital improvements. So what this is doing is putting the actual dollars that we need for all those inspections into the operating budget.
Okay.
And then like Sue mentioned, the district equipment is $73,000 for the district-wide, which I think is a very extremely moderate sum to add for the entire district. Is again things, yeah, they are necessities. They're not wants, they are not luxury, they're not unnecessary items. It's just what we need for the district. If we go back up top, we have the $140,000 for the 2 new maintenance positions that we are proposing to add. Again, like we discussed a couple weeks ago.
The school board voted to ask to have those added, yes?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, they did. We have 620,000 square feet of buildings in our district. We have 1 general maintenance guy, 1 HVAC, and 1 electrician. If we follow the standards for plant operations, for 620,000 square feet, we should have 13 maintenance people. We have 1.
Remember the presentation that Carl did, he talked about those numbers. Remember to be in crisis mode, what do you call it, crisis mode, or run and hide mode?
So we're just putting
We're
out
not
fires
close
every
to,
single
right.
day. So the 142 maintenance positions at $70,000 each. Which, again, is something that will not happen if we end up with the default budget. The next line, the benefits for FICA New Hampshire retirement system are the benefits, the FICA New Hampshire retirement for those 2 positions and the catch up for the fiscal year 23 that I discussed last meeting. The personal request is the contingency for track movements and critical shortage. Then the next one is district-wide professional development for non-union employees. So our non-union employees, we don't have a fund for professional development for them. Each of the union contracts do have a stipulation on them for professional development. And our superintendent is very much supportive of professional development, and he wanted to add professional development funds for non-union employees. The last 3 lines are the one-time expenses that were in the fiscal year 23 voted budget that have to come out of the budget because they were a one-time expense. So it's $75,000 for the replacement of one of our maintenance vehicles, $21,000 for musical instruments, and And the 65,000 is the various technology or cameras or one-time.
Yeah, little things that all add
Little
up to
things that-
65.
So that is basically what would not happen if the voters decide to go for the default budget.
Okay.
Well, I want to correct how you phrase that. It's not going for the default, it's
Not going.
failing to pass the suggested and recommended budget.
Right.
Thank you, Sue.
See the difference in the wording?
Yes,
You
thank
don't
you.
get A or B, you vote on A.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, I definitely think we should read right down this line at the public hearing and the
I do too.
deliberative,
I do too.
Um,
Whether the school board,
because this is all things that will not happen.
Projected up there, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
we had a pretty, I don't know if you could stand watching us on video, Todd, but we had a lengthy discussion here at the last meeting when you were not with us, that we talked about, what are we gonna do? You know, Julie mentioned a couple of things, we threw some ideas out, none of those were palatable or reasonable to this committee. We didn't wanna vote that night, you weren't here, and I wanted you here, and I wanted us all here. Mark was someplace in video land, and Maria was ill, and we needed to all be here. So,
Okay. Questions for Maria?
This page is great detail, so
Yeah.
thank you for doing it.
Never seen anything like it, right, Michael?
Best business administrator I've ever seen here,
For sure.
I agree.
Thank you.
Here, here.
hands down.
It's not only me. I have an amazing team behind me.
Best
I
business
cannot do it
administrator
without them.
team,
Yeah.
hands down.
Yes,
Nice job,
definitely a
guys.
team.
It goes back to, the budget committee can ask for whatever they want, correct, Michael? In whatever format they want it in, and it could be, has been delivered to us over and over and over again in the couple of years that I've been here and Maria's been.
Sometimes a little late, and I apologize for the package not being, but with everything that is going on, I do my best. We're trying our best.
So I'm just gonna say, so during the, not the public hearing, but during deliberative, somebody may say, I'm just shooting devil's advocate here, you know, so if they don't pass the proposed, and they go to the default, and you give them this list with all the information of what
Right.
will not get done,
Right.
their argument might be is, well, you can still get it done, it's a bottom line budget.
Well, yeah, but what would we have to cut to get those things done?
No, I get it, I get it.
Personnel. And that's when the
somebody's got their heart saying-
Superintendent stands up and says,
Exactly. And so, this is a conversation I think I had with Todd, going like, in the event that during the meetings we have in January and February, somebody says, look, I want all these things, but I want, budget B, not A. I think you may be,
Well, they can't affect the default and the deliberative, so what they would do from the floor is take action, right? And,
so my point is, so if they took action, you might want to come back and say, listen, if somebody was to propose either, increasing the budget or decreasing the budget, what that is worth as far as personnel. So somebody said,
Yep.
I want you to knock off X amount. You might want to get ready to say, look, if we did that, this is what the consequences would be.
Sure, yeah. We met with all of the principals and directors this past week to talk about that very thing. So one of the things that, and Maria can, I'm sure, explain it more aptly, but I'll give it the brief overview, Maria. As far as if you wind up with default budget, it's not only the difference between proposed and default that gets impacted. You now have increased costs in some of those uncontrollables within that default budget that you now have to account for. And some of those uncontrollable things are things that you must do. They're the have-tos. And at some point, the have-tos are going to push out the want-tos, right? Within our budget, we have lots of have-tos. And then we have a much smaller number of those want tos, right? School districts have to first fund their obligations, fulfill their obligations, meet the obligations as identified by laws and educational rules, state and federal. And then we have some of those things that make us a more special school district maybe than some other places. Different learning opportunities for all of our students. So we met, this is not the first time that some of us have done this kind of exercise. It sounds like it hasn't been one, fortunately, that was done often here. However, what we had to do was, Maria and I first met, and we talked about, so if you wind up with default, where does that stand? I think a conservative estimate, we thought estimating conservatively was that we would be looking at having to reduce by $1 million from our default budget. So you'd have to look at some of our current expenditures and say, we would have to at least reduce by at least $1 million of what we currently expend. And how do you get there, right? Just because of increased costs of other services and goods that you must have. So looking at $1 million, as I said last time, you're looking at staff members, right? There's really no two ways about it. We looked at stuff, we didn't get deep into it because, again, you don't know what you have for default until you wind up with default. And when you wind up with default, we are really looking at a budget that's based on pricing from 2 years ago. And now you're going into a third year, right? So it's really 3-year-old pricing for goods and services that you're now having to fund. We all know what the difference between goods and services is right now, just in a year's time, right? Now, some of those things are accounted for in the default budget as far as contractual obligations, so salaries and things. So some of those inflate with the default budget, and you don't have to worry as much about those, but there are still those things. So looking for $1 million, that's what we did. We had all of the principals and directors here. We spent time talking about it, talking about where do you go. We broke into groups. Everybody worked collaboratively. It was, I think, it was interesting that several of them came up and talked to us about, hey, this was really great. Now, you don't typically hear that when you're talking about, to our educators about what would you do if the worst thing happened, right? The worst thing that can happen to us is, as far as finance goes, is winding up with a default budget. That's about the worst thing that can happen to you in a school district. But they were appreciative of the process. They were appreciative to participate in it, and it gave them a different look at, how do we go about doing this, and how are we going to come together on this, because it's a district-wide approach. I don't want to go into real detail as far as any specific positions that were discussed, because we don't want to cause widespread panic and people to start with rumors and conjecture, and this is going to be cut and that. And it's not done, this isn't one of those, let's, scare people into coming out to vote. It's really just being informative. People need to know this is something that's really complicated, as we all here know, right? This is an $82 million budget, essentially, right? I joke oftentimes, I've joked for years, it's not exclusive to here, that sometimes it feels like we're expected to run an $82 million lemonade stand. Because when people talk about comparing the largest organization in all 4 towns, even if you combined probably any other organization in all 4 towns, or the 4 largest organizations in all 4 towns, they would pale in comparison to our organization here with the amount of staff and the size of the budget, never mind the scope of the work that is expected of us on a daily basis. So, in doing that, you're definitely looking at positions. We estimate, at $1 million, you're estimating about $90,000 per professional staff member. You're estimating about half of that for a paraprofessional staff member. So we talked in detail.
Chris, just to be clear, sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
when you're talking about this $1 million, you're saying were this proposed to be reduced by $1 million?
No, talking about if we were to get default.
Okay.
You're still looking to reduce, you're still going to have to cut positions and stuff, materials and supplies, from what you move forward with default. When you get default, we won't be able to afford everything that we have. We will still be, we estimate, 1 million shy. And that's a conservative estimate. We don't know. You really don't know until you get there. But if we were to say, wind up with default and be $1 million short, you're looking at, we looked, everywhere. You're looking at professional staff positions in elementary school. You are looking at professional staff positions, and this is all, again, potential, I'm going to keep qualifying, but, you'd be looking at preschool, kindergarten, elementary school, grades 1 through 5. You'd be looking at middle school positions. We'd be looking at high school positions. And you're looking in all areas. You'd be looking at, you have your cores that you're required to do. For example, in elementary school, right, we have a policy that maxes our class size. We can't exceed that class size policy. Our class size policy is below the state allowable class sizes. We could look at, do we want to change policy and move that forward to look at increasing class sizes? But we didn't consider that. But, so we're pretty limited because you need a substantial number of students at every grade level in every school to be reduced specific to that grade level in order to say we can reduce by a whole section, right? That we can go down from 3 third-grade classrooms at X elementary school to 2. Our numbers, there's not that much fluctuation there. We really, we're not running, yes, Captain?
And then as a parent, your numbers might start dropping because a lot of us moved to this town, or this area, for a quality education. And when there's already been waivers to up some classrooms, I didn't, like, when I first moved here, kindergarten was 11 kids. Kindergarten is 19 kids. I did not send my kid to kindergarten at Timberlane this year. I paid for private school. And when you are dropping programming and special services that people move for, some of those numbers in some of those towns might move to private school, which is gonna lower the
Sure.
enrollment, which impacts the budget going forward.
Absolutely. That's a reduction in revenue. And,
It also impacts our property values.
it does.
Yeah.
When you don't have a desirable school district, your property values tank.
Yeah. The number one, now I've tried to get hard data on that. I've talked to real estate agents. I've reached out to different organizations to do that. There must be some index that real estate agents use to measure, property values or, what do people find most valuable in the places in which they're looking to buy homes. What I've gotten from several folks is they're not aware of any index or anything that's been created. However, every realtor I've spoken to, I've probably spoken to 30 of them, they say the same thing. They say, in a bedroom community, which is what our 4 towns are, right? You're not moving here for some major industry or public transportation or, anything like that. We are bedroom communities. In a bedroom community, so the number one most influential factor on property values is your schools. Your families are looking to come to our 4 towns to settle, live, raise a family, have their kids attend our schools. That's what they're looking for. So that, not hard data, but what I've learned is that the schools are the number one most influential factor on your property value in our 4 towns, and probably in all of New Hampshire, if not all of the country. But so, you are looking at significant cuts to personnel. Are there enough paraprofessionals to absorb all the cuts? Absolutely not. The overwhelming majority of our paraprofessionals are dedicated for students identified as in need of special education. That is required by law. We do have some regular education paraprofessionals. There's a place to go there a little bit. We looked at administration. There's not a lot of latitude there. The district already did a bit of cutting with administration, with the separation from SAU 55. Quite frankly, I had initially anticipated proposing some additional administrative positions specific to special education, and I did not propose those based on where we were going with the proposed budget. I didn't feel that it was appropriate to be proposing additional positions given the increase that I knew we were already approaching through the process. But in looking beyond those, teaching positions or professional staff positions, so it could be counseling, nursing, coaches, when I say coaches, instructional coaches, like a literacy coach, math coaches, all areas, you name it, we've looked at it, and the list that I have probably touches every area of education that you can imagine, even looking at, we came up with about 14 or 15 positions that we would look at. In addition to that and the paraprofessional, when you look at materials and supplies and other things, you're also looking at things like, are we, and I guess it lives in between two things. There's a couple, for example, are you looking at limiting the different offerings and opportunities for students in the way of, say, AP courses? One of the things that we do, actually, we pay for our students to take the AP exam. So all of the students that are in an AP class are required to take the AP exam, and we actually pay for those exams. I think they're about $90 a piece. It's a total of about $20,000. Now, when you don't pay for that, you can't say you have to take it, and that will have an impact on our program in its entirety anyway. In addition to that, you're looking at eliminating clubs, because you'd be looking at eliminating stipends to pay for clubs or different sports or different activities. You'd be looking at limiting things as far as theater and music goes, the different festivals and participation in different events. Sue pointed out, the uniforms in the proposed budget, those we wouldn't even be talking about those. But, just as a point of information, those uniforms, they are 20 years old. The dresses that are in this budget, so now I'm talking about something separately, I'm talking about the proposed budget now. Those dresses were purchased when the PAC was built.
They're nasty.
They look like it.
Well, they look lovely on,
They do.
okay? The young ladies look lovely in them,
And you can roll them up and stick them in your car and shake it out.
and it doesn't,
Never had to
stick
iron
good.
them.
I haven't checked that with my daughters yet, but my joke is that why don't they just use these for the Crucible costumes? Because they have that very 1600-ish look to them.
Sound of music.
Classic.
Yes,
So
very classic look,
let's
yes.
stop beating up the poor ladies that have to wear those concert outfits. And get back to what Mike's original point
Yeah.
was, and I'm gonna piggyback on that if I can. History has shown in this district at deliberative, that kind of question may be asked of you. And you're the one that will have to speak up. I mean, I
Yeah.
know you have some experience here, but you ain't seen nothing yet.
Oh, I've been to most of the deliberative
Yeah, I
sessions
know
in the
you have.
past 20 years.
Yeah,
I'm not afraid.
as a private, yeah. They'll specifically say, is it 14 positions and all the field trips? Is it 13 positions and all the paras? How many paras? Blah, blah, blah. And I propose, and they'll make a random decision about how much they wanna, in my mind, random, about how much they wanna cut the budget, and then want you to, on the fly, calculate what that would do. So, and I know you don't wanna scare any voter, but,
But it's scary.
It is scary.
right, but the voters who are educational supporters need to know, that's the reality.
Exactly.
If that's what happened, we're gonna lose this many positions, class size is gonna go up, you're gonna lose special courses, you're gonna lose out on the quality of education, and once again, the kids lose.
That's right. And specifically what you're saying, it's not just in March at the vote. It's at that deliberative session, which is just as important.
The hearing is a little calmer
Right.
and quieter,
Because they can't,
historical,
because it's a presentation.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
But at deliberative, where there's a more open forum,
Right. It's really a two-part event.
right,
It's the deliberative session, town hall meeting, and then it's the vote on the warrant articles in March. So it's that Thursday night in February, and it's that second Tuesday in March.
Here's the thing that comes up every year, okay, is that and this will happen at deliberative, come hell or high water, we had a huge surplus. Why can't that be the buffer? And it happens every year,
somebody will ask that.
right? And I've explained it multiple ways to different people that, we're budgeting 18 months out, we have to, you know, all the positions, everything, we have to assume that it's gonna be 100% filled, we have to budget for what is in the plan, right? But ultimately, that is what drives a lot of these, you know, votes to try and cut the budget at the deliberative is, well, we had $4 million in a surplus last year, we had
Yeah,
5
reserve
million the year
fund
before.
balance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I believe one of the biggest drivers for that surplus is generally positions that didn't end up getting filled during that year.
That's a big driver, at least for the 2 years that I've been here. Large part of it was the additional revenue that we received for all the COVID aid, all the grants that so the 2 years that I've been here, the largest driver was really
It's been an
that.
anomaly for you, but
Yeah.
but we
got-
did have pretty I mean, traditionally, if you go back, you can see, and when I say large, I mean, it's $1 million is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
$3 or $4 million is a lot of money. But on an $80 million, $70 million budget, it's within I think a very conservative percentage of
is.
what the total budget is.
Right, people don't realize.
But it sounds like a big number, right?
Right.
And then when you're saying, well, we want these extra millions for this proposed budget, people tend to shy away from it because they're like, well, you ended with 4 million last year. So why can't we just plan on that? And I know the answer is
I know
you
you
can't
do.
plan on it because
Right.
that's not good budgeting.
And the
That's
auditors
not-
recommend at least a 2%,
You always recommend.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
At least 2%.
Yeah.
So that's the 30-second spiel you have to work on. Encapsulate all that in 30 seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll speak up during deliberative and public hearing, and any one of you can too. I mean, we can't plan for a surplus that doesn't exist.
The
right?
other thing too is that surplus goes back to the taxpayers.
It does.
That's right.
It does
So
indeed.
$1 million or $2 million back to the taxpayers is a smidgy,
Yeah.
teeny bit.
Well, from their perspective, they don't feel it or
Yeah.
realize it for
It's a
for a
teeny
year,
bit.
year and a half afterwards, right?
And they never
So-
truly feel it because things go up.
Yeah.
Prices
Right.
go up, so they
Of course
never
not.
really see the rebate check in the mail.
Nobody got a check, and
Right.
So-
you won't get a check.
Let me alter Michael's question. You just talked about what life would be like under an 81,151,107 default budget. Were the proposed budget to be equal to that, would it be less of a dramatic impact if it were a proposed budget at that number versus the default number?
Depending on what we remove from the current proposed budget, it could be, yes.
Right.
You'd have control over what you're going to remove
Yes.
prior to.
Yes. I mean, it basically would be this whole $1.8 million right here,
then some.
right? So, I mean, I think the danger with the default is, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like spelling out all of these things that we would not get in a default were the default to win the day, or I should say, were the proposed to lose the day. Does no mean no apply to all of this? Like, you literally wouldn't be able to do any of this because we're saying and stating this is that delta between the default and the proposed.
That's not accurate for that, right? So isn't that more for a warrant article? If they say no to a warrant article, so like to go buy a fire truck,
That's no
that
means.
means no means no.
But Michael, if they say no to the proposed budget difference between that and the default is made up of this 1.8 million of all these things that are stated here in
It's
1, 2, and
1.8
3.
million.
Yeah.
That's it, just put a period there. What makes up that 1.8 million, they can decide.
Well, some.
There are things on this
there are things
list that we would
they're
have to
one-
keep.
One-time costs.
No, I get it,
Right.
but unlike that example of no means no, like if you go to buy a fire truck and they say no, you can't allocate funds from somewhere else
To buy the fire truck.
to buy the fire truck. But with that 1.8 million, this team can massage that and do what they want.
Well, it's just like these inspections that are under professional services. You can't tell us we're not gonna spend for these inspections because we're required by law to
Right.
do that. So that is part of the proposed budget. We will be spending it on that,
Yeah.
or money
Whether
will
it's
be spent.
proposed or default.
Exactly.
And they have to figure out where they're gonna
We're-
take it from.
Right.
We're doing the responsible thing, putting it and requesting it, which is what we're supposed to be doing, but if we don't get it, it has to happen anyway, so.
But I'm just gonna.
Of this list on this third page, it's really those number 3 items, district equipment, that there might be, some flexibility. It's really about that $73,000 that we could say, well, okay, though, yeah, it's not the uniforms, we're not gonna get the cafeteria tables, the projectors, et cetera, but all these other things, when you look, most of them are required by law or
Right.
necessary to operate.
Right.
Again, it shows how much
Painting the SAU.
less we can control that we have, that we can mess around with. We have so many obligations.
Right. And let's be honest, more than 50% of the delta between the default and the proposed is the million we want to put towards facilities.
Correct.
Right? I mean, obviously that does not happen under a default.
That's right.
Right.
And what's the rough number of what is in the default when it comes to facilities? Is it 1 million, 1.2?
900
For,
something
on the
thousand?
CIP, capital money?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, it's one.
1.
About one.
it's just under, right?
Yeah, it's
996,000 or
920
something.
something.
Which is categorized as keeping the lights on?
Yes.
Pretty much,
Not even, I mean, barely, right?
maybe.
Right now, barely, yes. With the increase on everything.
So the other part too, I just want to have us think about, so during these future meetings in January and February, for some of our residents who come there and they know year after year after year, we haven't been funding the capital projects at the rate that we should have, hence why we're in the condition we're in. So when they see from these charts that Maria made, that the percent increase could be anywhere from 9 to 16, depending on what passes. This is only putting a small amount of money into our capital. And so if you're Mr. or Mrs. homeowner saying, okay, if I'm gonna bite into this big chunk of an increase, but you're only putting this much into the capital, it's because there's other expenses, as you've shown. So that's gonna be one of the challenges, I think, to convince or educate that homeowner, because they're not reading these line by lines. They're saying like, you want to go up this much, and you're talking about, we've been behind the 8 ball for years in capital, and we're going to get a big increase, but only a small amount's going to it. If you're going to increase it, put it all there. That will be could be their mentality.
Right. And that is the genesis behind that warrant article
Sure.
for the $50 million bond, right? But
To
not
turn that-
necessarily.
To turn that
Is it
payment
fif-
that we used to have for
Right, for the PAC.
PAC
Right.
into.
15
using-
million?
20.
20 million.
20 million.
20 million. But yeah, I get what you're saying, Michael. I mean, it's going up 8 million from last year, and we're putting an extra million into capital.
Right.
So there's
You're like only $1 million?
right.
Yeah.
So the driver for the other 7 million is increases in benefits, increases in.
Maria, that you guys identified them in here. So
Yeah, Maria's tricolor pie chart here is extraordinarily powerful, and I think that's something we're going to be showing time after time, because that tells a
And
story.
also this one, the list of the things on the
I think what
proposal.
we want to do on this public hearing is not, I mean, you can give them this stuff, but we don't bombard them.
No.
with
No,
stuff.
no, no.
They need visuals.
Very summarized, yes.
I like pictures.
Yeah, very summarized.
And then let's just leave them your cell phone number after that.
Not a problem.
Sorry.
Excuse me, Todd.
Yes.
I just for some historical stuff I'd put together, just some information regarding proposed and default budgets that have passed and not passed. And I made a number of copies for, I don't know as I have enough for everybody, but just something historically for us to take into consideration with this kind of a budget increase, which obviously is needed, but when I'm looking at the historical data, and it goes back and forth, but I don't know if there's how much of a tolerance there is for budget going up this amount. So, I think that the main question that we've been talking about this whole time is, are we prepared to live with the default budget? Because you're going to have, the second and third pages show historically who's voting and how many people are voting, which is something that we had talked about at the last meeting about getting the word out, getting people to vote. at the top of the 2019 annual voting results, those are the town populations based on the 2020 census. And then if you look down and you see how many people total voted, it's a very small percentage. So we're up against, I think that we may have a little bit of trouble. I think that we were able to get the 2019-20 budget passed, which was $733,000, because I think everyone was real distracted with COVID, and they were more interested in the mask policy than anything else. And I say that in all seriousness. You can go back and watch the deliberative and public hearing. The only other time that we had an increase over the default budget of any significance was back in 2008 and 2009, when one for $779,000 passed. Just thought it was something kind of relevant that we should be looking at and be thinking about, because I'm worried about getting stuck with a default budget.
So I agree. It's definitely relevant. It's always been relevant. And for 5 years straight, we have kept it front of mind and tried to keep them close. My only counter to that is it's not enough.
I know.
We haven't put enough into these buildings. And the main reason is because we have been keeping it, hugging that line for
Exactly.
so long, right? And is this the year that we should
No.
expect a difference? I don't
Well,
know.
right, I mean, I know we had talked about, everybody's, so many of these costs that are going up that are out of our control, and everybody at home is having expenses go up that are out of their control. And when they go and they vote, all this information is great for us, but most of those people aren't gonna pay attention. They're gonna look at the two numbers, and they're gonna be like, man, my heating bill just tripled. I'm voting the lower number. That's my concern.
Yeah.
I don't know, I would really think about how we're gonna go with this.
That's huge.
It's a good point. It's a good point, Julie. Thoughts?
We're kind of at the same place we were 2 weeks ago. We really are, other than I asked Maria if she could make sure we kind of knew where the warrant articles were, so I wanted to see the respective warrant articles, but I've looked this over till my eyes are going buggy looking at those little tiny numbers. I can't even recommend where we could say lower this budget.
I can't either. And this is a cascading effect too, right? Like that same voter in the ballot box is not just gonna be faced with an increase and a delta between a default and a proposed, but there's gonna be a whole lot of warrant articles on there that are pretty crucial this year, right? For all the staff and so that's not necessarily our wheelhouse, although we will vote to recommend or not recommend each of the ones that impact the final number, but ultimately it's one big day at the voting booth, and there's a lot of things that we're hoping to get positive votes for. I don't know what the answer is. I mean,
I know.
education is key, but
Getting the
how do you
word
do
out.
that outside of the public hearing? And I know that my school board rep, Dr. Farah, has gone and spoken to the selectmen in our town to prepare them for what's coming.
Yeah.
Right? All of this, like what we're talking about, not just the proposed and the default, but also the warrant articles and the CBAs that are probably gonna be in front of everybody in March. I mean, that's one way to try to at least get the word out ahead of time, but ultimately, you're right. When my general feeling is that a lot of people just go in there and see the number and go based on what they see that day when they're voting, if they can get to the ballot box. Yeah.
Would we have the ability, I'm trying to think of the optics here, the appropriateness of it, of reaching out to the different district towns, parent-teacher groups, that type thing, or is that a no-tread zone? And just to supply information, those are going to be the most vested and invested of our population, tend to be younger families as well, who will feel the impacts, both tax-wise, but also, with their children.
Right. We have to be careful.
Yeah, that's
that
right. I
You
don't know
can't
logistics.
electioneer.
Yeah.
You can provide information, it needs to be factual. Now, private citizens can do whatever they want as far as advocating for one thing or the other, as far as how you might want to indicate to somebody as a private citizen, not through an organization or through an organized effort. We can't be, board
Can't be going to the
can't, or
PTA.
Right.
Well, I know when the PTA, when it's a candidate, they won't let just one. They'll let, it
Yeah, no,
has
I'm
to be
just saying,
both.
even if it's a one-page fact sheet with a
Yep,
link
we're
toward
going-
the graphics that we can make readily available, and this is what it is, this is the proposed where it's being spent, and salaries, benefits, maintenance, I mean, similar to what we
We're
have
doing
here, which
that.
is all public information. In other words, just planting the seed, look at this public information, it will affect you.
We are doing that. I've already been scheduled to go to all the PTA meetings in January. That's just a start. We have to get this information out there. We need to attend. Maria will probably be coming with me, given it's the budget. We need to hit all kinds of events. I talked about not wanting to stand up in front of the bands or anything, or at the PAC and performances and things, but I think we probably need to make sure that we just get the information out, whether it's at a wrestling meet, a swim meet, gymnastics, the PAC, you name it.
Yeah.
This, just to get the information out there, make it available to people. Don't want to disrupt, families watching their children play, but, this is,
Why
they
the
might
children-
not be watching their children play if they don't have the information at which they can make their decision.
Right.
Again, I think many people in the community are going to say, what's my impact? And so
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
pieces of paper that you produce, it says, so they can look up, it says, I live in this town, and that's my house,
Yep.
and this is the,
All increase.
what it's gonna cost me. So I think part of your delivery, you give them all this stuff, but the bonus is, what's it gonna cost me?
It's gotta be simplified, and that's where
And
this
these two
bottom
pieces right
tax
here,
impacts.
these are
Beautiful.
phenomenal,
Yep.
phenomenal.
I don't think that we should
No.
go spreading that around, but for all of us here, this is a very powerful document, okay? Because it's that's a long period of time, right? That's a long period of time. And what we're talking about here is dramatically different than what's been seen here in 12 years?
13.
13 years. So I'm of two minds. After 5 years being on here, I'd like to kind of push the envelope a little bit and see if there's an appetite to invest in the schools as far as the facilities and go for that extra $1 million. But the risk is, even if we do get the word out, we could still be faced with, oh, that's way higher. I mean, I just, that's a huge impact. I don't think I'm ready to do that. And then we lose, and then the proposed loses, and then we go into, crisis mode under a default, and I really don't want that. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I do know that we need to get a number on the floor here to vote tonight, and at least get it to discussion, and then we can always, yes.
So I want to just mention something that Chris said. So you talked about going in front of these events, so you don't want to take away the attention of the event. But maybe if we just handed out like an index card that you just flood everywhere and just say, here, just go read on your own time. Enjoy the show. So
Sure.
we,
With the link.
that's my point. Yes, with the link. Thank you. That way, they're not getting distracted with numbers when they came to see a holiday concert. But you did hand them a thing that said, if you want information, go to this link. And if you make that a common denominator everywhere, that's about as much as we can do. Like, we can give them the information, we can't make them read it. But if you give them the information, a link, you put it on our websites,
Town halls.
town halls, I'm assuming you can send it home in like
Newsletters.
shuttle packs, but, because it's not electioneering, you're just saying, here's a link to information so you can educate yourself.
On the flip side of that,
Huh?
on the flip side of that, everybody has a link to tonight's meeting, and we have 0 people watching, right? Is that how many people are?
No,
zoomed on?
that's just-
Okay, I thought that's what she said. But I'm saying,
I don't
everybody
think
has
so, right,
access to
Dean?
this, but everybody has access to this information.
Dean can tell us.
This is the Zoom.
As a parent, if you give me one more piece of paper, I'd probably lose my mind, right? Like, they don't want that. What they want to hear is, at the beginning, all he needs to say is, welcome to the wrestling match. Because of the budget that we have in place, we have programming like this. If we are not able to maintain the upward trend like everybody's experiencing in their households, some programs will end up being cut. Hopefully, we can still continue these wrestling matches next year. Remember to vote, and keep it sweet and simple, or however you want to say it. And just a reminder that, you know, we have to be able to financially support these programmings to continue to have them for our students.
I'd almost be a little cautious. It could almost sound
In
threatening.
a nicer way, you know,
Oh,
but it's true.
It sounds like you're threatening, hey, you like wrestling, you better vote for this, otherwise this could be
There's
gone.
gotta be
It's
information.
accurate, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah,
like the
so-
hockey. Hockey's like, what, $35,000? If we have a budget that's millions less, are we gonna have a hockey team next year? That wouldn't be very logical, right? I'd much rather cut a hockey team than a staff member, right?
Teaching a class.
But,
Right.
you know, that's
think
a
we're
horrible,
telling you is
offensive statement
you
to
get the
say to many
information out there.
parents, but it's
Yes.
true.
Catherine.
Understood.
I know.
4 people are watching? Yeah, okay, so.
400?
4 people.
They can
That doesn't mean people, I mean, people can go watch it
They can watch it
afterwards.
after. And we can look
That
at
being
It could be
said,
for SAU
It could all be
employees,
gathered together in one
But I'm
location.
saying, nobody needs the link, we know where it is. They
Oh,
can-
yeah, and we don't know what's on Cape, it's being broadcast on Cape.
yeah, but people that.
No, I know,
that-
but everybody knows where it is.
They
You
do,
know, they don't
but
need
people who
another
are
piece of
watching aren't seeing what we're seeing, they're
They're
not
not
seeing the
seeing
graphs, they're
Yeah.
not seeing the numbers. So if I were interested, I still probably wouldn't watch, simply
Yeah.
because we're talking about numbers and spreadsheets that
can't
nobody
see.
can see.
can't keep up.
And if they were interested, and here's the one page with, you know, graphs, 3 columns, oh, didn't realize that. Here's a link to deep delve into it. And let's face it, you put it on the Facebook pages, it will get talked about.
That's the thing. Once it starts to, people start hearing the numbers,
Yeah.
they're gonna get
So,
rattled. They're
I think
gonna
it's gonna have the
look
opposite
for
effect, though.
information.
Yeah, so it could be the opposite effect, but I think we owe it to ourselves, to our school, to try to push for what we believe is right. But we also owe it to those who may be less inclined to vote for something, to get the information out so that they can weigh it on their own, because it's going to impact the school dramatically or our tax bill dramatically.
Yeah.
Educate, I mean, that's,
Yeah, it's important for us to take the information to everyone, help them understand the information. And helping people understand the information is putting it into a context that they can digest,
Yeah.
that they can relate to. So, for example, I guess, I'm just making this up as we go. And I'm looking only at the one that is on the proposed budget, not, just because it's smaller numbers and it's easier to work with. But if you say, live in a $500,000 home in, we'll say, Sandown, the annual tax impact is approximately $413, right? So how do you make that real to people? If you go to Dunkin' Donuts to buy your coffee every day, you're spending way more than that. That's probably maybe 2 or 3 family dinners out.
Yeah.
You know, important things to people, understood, but, you know, think of the other things that you would spend $413 on over a year. And now you're talking about, and we can also in this, you know, looking at the apportioned or the proportional pieces of the tax rate too. You can talk about, you know, here's what that really means, right? Here's what you're getting. So if you were to go and have your child attend a private high school, say any of the area private high schools, you're looking at least $13,000 a year, right? Now, the average cost per pupil, all of that, you know, you can talk all you want with all those different things, but for example, for me, I knew, you know, when my kids were going into high school, if, say, Central Catholic were a consideration, it was going to cost me, call it $15,000 a year, just to make those round numbers. It would cost me $15,000 a year, but I'm still paying the taxes as well. But my taxes are $6,500 in Atkinson, and I've had 2 kids educated every year for the past 13 years. Now I'm down to 1. You know, I'm paying a lot more for that one now in college, but, you know, to have 2 kids receive an excellent education, participate in all the events and the activities that they both participate in, with all the learning opportunities they have, whether it's social, emotional, and academic, for $6,500 a year, that's a bargain.
So,
And, sorry, Chris, I do think that when you put it that way, that is a way that people really can understand it. You know, they can really picture that and see those numbers, and I think that's like a great approach to kind of explain, you know, not explaining,
Yeah,
but.
it's got to make sense. If it's, we understand this, this is great, it's incredible information to have, but you can't throw this at them.
so we all agree we have to get the word out, to get the voters out, because in all of our towns, especially 2 of them, there are a certain number of voters that will always go out and vote no matter what, and they'll always vote no. So it's our job to educate the rest of the community so that they can evaluate on their own.
And when you look at some of the voting numbers, when you see totals of 175, 750, 650, it's a low number.
It's 8:30.
Sorry.
It's Christmas week. I love you all. I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to have the school district budget committee recommend the 2024 proposed budget as being $83,020,418.
I'll second. Discussion.
You want more discussion?
We'll zoom in. I thought Sue was pretty clear about that.
It's Christmas week.
We've already discussed it a lot. I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Six, 7, 8. All opposed? 1. Abstain? 0.
810.
Motion passes. With that, that is the number we are gonna go to public hearing with, 83,020,418. And our next meeting is the public hearing scheduled for January 12th, 2023. At the Performing Arts Center, we'll be presenting the proposed budget with the school board presenting their default budget. Michael?
I was gonna let you know right now, I cannot make that meeting.
Okay. Good to know.
The public hearing,
The January
12th, public hearing
yeah, the public hearing.
What time is that?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. at the PAC.
at the PAC. Okay. I am going to adjourn the meeting, 8:25 p.m. Happy holidays, everyone, and we'll see you again next year.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Is there any update on this